People have always craved something astonishing to look at, and the circus was one of those rare and weird places where they could satisfy that curiosity. Among all the acts, it was the freak shows that drew the most attention and fascination for reasons only human nature can explain. With that in mind, let's dive straight into 15 circus freaks you won't believe actually existed. Number 15. Whale Oil Gus. Augustus Elliot Folger lived a life that could fill a dozen sea shanties. Born in 1852 on Nantucket, he lost his mom young and took to the ocean at 15, working aboard whaling ships. He survived falling overboard and spending a night in the sea, later turning those stories into songs. After his wife died, Gus left the ocean behind and built a new life on stage. With a booming voice and a suitcase full of harpoons, he toured the US and Canada as a singing storyteller. He brought a fin whale corpse on a train car, sang hymns and ballads, and reminded people what whaling once meant. When he died in 1939, his ashes were shipped to Nantucket, but lost for 82 years. They were finally buried in 2021 beside the parents he'd long outlived. His stone reads, Whale Oil Gus, and the song he closed every single show with played one last time at his grave. Number 14. Willie Camper. Giselle, Willie Camper never had much time, but he left a lasting mark. He was born in 1924 in Memphis and grew to a staggering height, eventually reaching over 8 feet tall due to gigantism and severe thyroid issues. His growth never slowed. By the time he was a teenager, he wore size 32 shoes and stood so tall that few could look him in the eye. The sideshow world took notice. Willie began performing at fairs and carnivals across the country, towering above crowds who had never seen anyone like him. Despite his size, he remained soft-spoken and kind. In 1943, while performing in Martinez, California, his heart gave out. He was just 18. They buried him in a special 9-foot coffin back in Mississippi, but the exact site has long been lost. Willie Camper remains one of the tallest African Americans ever recorded. His life was short, but in every photograph he stands quietly proud, larger than life, and still growing in memory. Number 13. Zoe Meliki. Zoe's name showed up in old cabinet cards and trade listings under many spellings, Meliki, Maliek, but the face was always the same. Heavy hair piled high, deep gaze, dressed in layered show robes. She was one of many women marketed as Circassian beauties, a sideshow act popularized by P.T. Barnum in the 1860s. These women weren't necessarily Circassian, but that didn't matter to the crowd. What mattered was the hair, teased into a halo, and the promise of mystery. The real Circassians, an ethnic group from the northern Caucasus, had long been fetishized in Europe and the US as the standard of exotic beauty. Their image sold cosmetics, inspired stories, and filled the Ottoman harems romanticized in Western media. Performers like Zoe were placed into that fantasy and put on stage. She didn't breathe fire or lift weights. She just stood there, silent and stared at, idealized, mislabeled, and misunderstood. Her life, like many other circus freaks, was sold as an image, not a biography. Number 12. Zola Williams. Well, not much is written about Zola, but what we do know tells a quiet kind of story. She was married to John Williams, better known as the alligator-skinned man, a performer with ichthyosis. Together, they were part of the sideshow circuit sometime around the 1930s through the 1950s. Zola worked under the bearded lady category, a role that often walked a line between fascination and ridicule. But she wasn't just filler in someone else's spotlight. People who knew them said Zola brought calm and sharpness to the shows, managing the space between the audience's curiosity and her husband's condition. They made appearances as a couple, sometimes billed together, sometimes separately. No big headline followed them. No scandal. Just a small space in the traveling circus, carved out by consistency. Zola didn't become a household name, but she didn't disappear either. Her name still shows up in collector archives, quietly holding a place in sideshow history where many others have simply vanished. Number 11. Joe the Leopard Boy. A.E. Bishel's skin told people everything they wanted to know, without him saying a word. Leukoderma left his body covered in blotches, light and dark patches across his skin. That was all it took for people to stare. Under Barnum's management, he was named Joe the Leopard Boy and sent out on display. The spots were real, but the story they sold wasn't. In dim museums, people pointed and whispered. He was there to be looked at, not listened to. His body wasn't his anymore. It belonged to the crowd. No one asked what that felt like. In 1909, Joe died after falling through a backstage trapdoor. He was only 40. The room emptied. The story ended. There were no questions or legacy, just a man who lived every day being noticed, but never truly seen. And when it was over, no one stayed to find out who he actually was underneath the skin. Number 10. Zumia the Egyptian. There's very little confirmed about Zumia. Her name appears briefly in auction listings, photos, and archived trade ads, labeled as an African-American Circassian beauty, a mix that didn't quite fit the historical mold, but was sold as exotic nonetheless. Her hair was teased out wide in the same exaggerated style as other women in the act, but her face stood out. There were no flaming swords or loud monologues, just presence, quiet, controlled. On one old CDV, she's captured sitting, back straight, eyes direct. Everything else, her act, her life, her voice, is lost to time or buried in private collections. The reality for many performers like Zumia was that they were promoted more for a story than a skill. The Circassian brand became a label used to sell fantasy, not truth. Zumia was part of that machinery, maybe willingly, maybe not. What survives is the image. The rest, for now, stays out of reach, as most real stories in these circuits often do. Number 9. The human fly Anna Merkel. Anna Merkel didn't need wires, gimmicks, or fake risks. She scaled walls. That was the act. By the 1930s, Merkel was touring with major circuses like Al G. Barnes, Sells Floto, and John Robinson. She'd earned the nickname the human fly, climbing up ropes and poles and rigged towers with her bare hands, sometimes barefoot, often outdoors. Her posters showed her mid-climb, halfway to the top, the drop below her sharp and real. Merkel's name came up again when Dave Price's Circus collection hit the auction decades later. His archives included a lithograph of her, tucked among elephant acts and lion tamers. But Anna wasn't just a decoration. Her routine was physical, practiced, and always dangerous. She performed during a time when women in the circus were often boxed into narrow roles: bearded lady, contortionist, beauty display. Merkel climbed out of that. Her act was about risk, real muscle, real grit, no illusion. Number 8. Captain Fred Walters. Fred had no intention of ending up in a sideshow. He'd served with pride, followed orders, and kept his posture sharp. But after a medical treatment involving silver nitrate, his skin began to shift in color. The change wasn't sudden, but it was permanent. He tried to carry on with life, but doors kept closing. He was forced to leave the life he knew behind. Eventually, he found work performing under the name the Blue Man. It wasn't what he planned, but it paid the bills. For over 30 years, Fred showed up for the job. Same coat, same walk, same tired smile. The medicine that altered his skin also wore down his body. In 1923, it stopped his heart. No one wrote much about who he was before the show, but anyone who watched closely could see it. The way he stood, the way he stayed composed. even when everything else had changed. He was always more than what people saw. He was a human and a man, not a circus freak. Number 7. Buffalo Bill. William Frederick Cody wasn't just a performer. He built the entire stage. He worked as a scout, hunter, soldier, and rider long before fame ever touched his name. But once it did, he knew what to do with it. Under the name Buffalo Bill, he launched a show that turned his life and American history into a spectacle. The Wild West tours ran for decades across the US and Europe and brought staged battles, sharpshooting contests, and horseback parades to sold-out crowds. He shared the spotlight with Annie Oakley, Calamity Jane, Sitting Bull, and performers from every corner of the globe. But behind the theatrics, Cody had real battlefield scars, real stories, and a complicated past. He believed in preserving native culture, even as his show reenacted its destruction. He fought for women's rights while wrestling with his own marriage. And when the show faded, he left behind a town, a legacy, and a version of the West that never really left the stage. Number 6. Mongol Lark. Well, this guy didn't roar, crawl out of the jungle, or in any sense was a wild man. He had just vitiligo. But in the circus world, truth was never enough. His skin, a natural patchwork of light and dark, was twisted into a lie. They called him the Wild Spotted Boy and claimed he came from some imaginary tribe. The costume was fake, the backstory worse, but the eyes watching him didn't care. They wanted a spectacle. What they got was a quiet young man, doing his job like anyone else, trying to survive. Off stage, he was known to be thoughtful, gentle, and always a little uneasy with the role he had to play. Before vitiligo had a name, he became a symbol of something he never asked for. The spotlight didn't admire him. It just trapped him. And while the crowd stared at the patterns on his body, nobody ever asked who he was beneath them. Number 5. John and Hannah Battersby. John Battersby was small, just 50 pounds. His wife, Hannah, was nearly the opposite, 6 feet tall and over 700 pounds. Together, they weren't just an act. They were a contradiction that worked. They met under Barnum's Circus and traveled as a living contrast. In 1859, they had a daughter, Rachel, who was born into a world that gawked at her parents. But John and Hannah didn't just perform, they adapted. Hannah needed reinforced carriages and custom platforms to travel. John managed logistics until a spinal injury ended his part of the show. Hannah kept touring solo for years, even when her body started working against her. In 1889, she fell, fatally. Photographers came fast, hoping for one last shot. But John stopped them. No death photo, no spectacle. Their story wasn't a sideshow. It was a partnership, built on trust, stubbornness, and making a living in a world that didn't offer many choices. They weren't a joke. They were each other's anchor. Number 4. Heinrich Hogg. Heinrich didn't need special effects. His skin did all the work. Audiences first called him the India Rubber Man when they saw what he could do, pulling the flesh from his sides, neck, and torso 7 inches away from his body without pain. With a few practiced stretches, he could shape his arms into wings or mold his back like soft clay. His condition, what doctors today would call Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, was barely understood then, but it turned him into a star. Hogg toured across Europe, especially in vaudeville and cabaret circles, drawing gasps with every slow motion. He didn't chase interviews or create a mysterious character. He barely spoke to reporters at all. People remembered the act, but rarely the man. He wasn't flashy, wasn't loud, just someone whose body moved differently and quietly turned that difference into a career. In a business built on noise, Hogg kept it strangely quiet and still left a mark. Number 3. Priscilla Lowther. People rarely saw Priscilla for who she was. All they noticed was the hair. She had hypertrichosis, a condition that caused thick hair to grow across her face and body, and a dental condition that gave her 2 rows of teeth. People gave her a name, the Monkey Girl, long before they ever learned hers. After her father died, she was taken in by an American family who tried to protect her from the world's judgment. It wasn't easy. But Priscilla didn't hide. She joined the circus and built a life there, meeting Emmett Bahano, another performer with ichthyosis. The skin on his body looked cracked, like scales. They fell in love, married, and stayed together for nearly 60 years. The public called them the world's strangest married couple. But inside that tent, it was just 2 people trying to make a living. After Emmett passed in 1995, Priscilla kept going. Not as a curiosity, but as someone who chose her own story. Number 2. Fvelaez Campos. Fvelaez never needed props or gimmicks. His body alone stopped people cold. His signature move? Bending his knee fully backwards, like it were made of rubber instead of bone. It didn't hurt, and he made it look effortless. Campos came from Puerto Rico and got his start in small local shows before working his way across the Caribbean and into South America's circus scene. He didn't exaggerate his condition or dress it up with wild stories. What sold was his control, how he smiled mid-move, never grimaced, never strained. It wasn't just a trick, it was a skill. Behind the curtain, Campos was calm and generous, often helping fellow performers rehearse or adjust their acts. He didn't make noise or demand headlines. He just kept showing up and doing what no one else could. His life after the spotlight is mostly unknown. But on stage, Campos left an impression that didn't fade. Proof that sometimes quiet mastery speaks louder than spectacle. Number 1. Maryanne Bevan. Maryanne Webster grew up in London's working-class streets, one of 8 siblings, with little luxury but plenty of grit. She worked as a nurse, married Thomas Bevan, and raised 4 children in a modest but happy home. Then her body began to betray her. Her features hardened, her hands grew coarse, and pain became constant. It was acromegaly, a hormonal disorder that slowly reshaped her. When Thomas died in 1914, she was left with children to feed and no means to survive. So she entered a ugliest woman contest, won it, and turned that cruel label into her only lifeline. Circus managers saw profit, but Mary saw survival. She toured across Britain and America, sending every penny home. Behind the banners and laughter stood a woman who refused to break. The world mocked her face, yet her heart remained unshaken. Anne didn't live for pity, she lived for her children. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for joining us on this journey, and we'll see you in the next one.